All right, so we're going to talk very briefly about this photography. I want to review this vocabulary, and then we are going to run through this example, and I want to complete this example with y'all sort of watching. All right, so first off, we have something called composition. That is the arrangement of the parts of a picture, the foreground being closest to the viewer while the background is farther away. You've probably heard these terms before. Now, over here in this column, it's sort of explaining why that's important. So the composition may stress one part of the image more than another. So if something is in the foreground, that's probably what you're supposed to notice first. Yet again, the composition may show what the photographer thinks is the most important part of the subject. So just like in literature or in informational text, the photographer, like the author, is going to sort of put their point of view in the picture. So if they're focusing on the little girl and the mom, not the police officers, who do you think they think the most important person is? Probably little girl and mom. So this is how we begin to sort of unpeel the layers of a photo and what's really going on with the photo. All right, so then we have lighting and color, use of light, shadow, and color in the picture. This, I think, is really interesting, and it'll make more sense once we get to our example. So some images are in full color while others are black and white. Then we have some variations. Sometimes there are filters, and then some parts of the image are brighter or darker than others. So yet again, that will become more clear once we start looking at photos and examples. All right, so then we very simply have our subject, who is our primary figure, who is the content of the photo, and then the location. So where is the picture being taken? So for subject, it says the photograph may be taken of a person or a group of people in the foreground, or it might be an object of set of objects that the photo focuses on. So this doesn't always have to be a person. Sometimes it might be a thing. If I post a picture of my desk and it's completely empty, but there's a stack of books on it, likely where I want your eye to go is going to be that stack of books, and those books have some significance. Okay. And then location. It says location might be indoors in a particular type of building or outdoors. And what you really need to think about here is that you might not always know where the photos are being taken. Unless there's a caption that says this was taken in X place, you're pretty much guessing. You are making inferences based on what you see. So if you see desks and paper and pencil and maybe a whiteboard in the front of the room or a chalkboard or something like that, you're probably looking at a picture of a classroom. Whereas if you see grass and trees and maybe a picnic table, you're probably looking at a park. So you have to sort of think, what's going on in this photograph and where might it be? Where might it be? Like, where might that place be? All right, so let's look at some examples to make this more clear. This first example, we have this picture. It's of 5 men. They appear to be reading, and then you see this gentleman has his hands folded, sort of like in prayer. So we have a caption for this. It says, immigrant detainees praying at a detention facility in California, November 2013. Now, we're going to skip this part for now because that's the secondary part. So first, I want to talk about composition. So what is at the front? What is in the back? If you look at this particular picture is kind of weird because for me at least, nothing really screams out as being the foreground or the most important. I guess like these two gentlemen are the closest to the camera, but they're also facing away from the camera. And so since they're facing away from the camera, it seems like that might not be what they're wanting us to focus on. My mind instantly goes to this open book, and I'm going to explain why I think that is in just a second. So for foreground, I put the foreground of this photo is hard to identify. Of course, the men photographed are the closest to the viewer, but it's in this case, I'm not sure if they're the most important. And I actually didn't type that my reasoning, but my reasoning was because they're facing away from the camera. And so if you can't see their faces, if they're facing away, they might not be the most important part. All right, now we're going to look at perspective or angle. Yet again, just like with the composition of this picture, it's got a sort of interesting angle because for these two gentlemen, the picture is sort of taken from above them, and yet we have this man that seems to be cut off because he's standing and the rest of them are sitting. So it's kind of coming from above and they're praying. So I don't know if that's supposed to signify, that we are, that a heavenly person, a person above them is taking the picture. I don't know. That's worth some debate of why the photographer chose to do that. Maybe they were just trying to get everybody in the frame, So that's definitely something to think about. What is most interesting to me about the lighting and color of this picture is that it is striking. The first thing you notice, boom, is the color. These two gentlemen are wearing red. There's this red checkerboard in the middle. Then we have these men that are wearing the prison orange. So it's obvious to me that as soon as I see it, that these are probably people in prison. In this case, it's called a detention facility. They're detainees in a detention facility. And then we have these yellow books. So the colors are very vibrant in this picture. They stand out. They're striking. And then my eye immediately goes to this one neutral thing. We've got this open book in the middle of the table, sort of right by this checkerboard. And since it's open, since it's one of the very few things that's a neutral color, that's where my eye goes automatically. And I sort of feel like that's the most important part of the photo because it's different. Your eyes go to that open book in front of the people. It's likely a Bible, right? If they're praying. And I feel like that's probably the most important thing because it's different. It contrasts the other parts of the photo. All right. Then we've got subject and location. We know that even without the caption, we know there's three men and they seem to be prisoners of some sort. We already touched on that with lighting and color. They're wearing orange. Then I sort of describe what's going on with them. Location. Pretending like we don't have a caption. Your location is unclear. But if you take into account what the people are wearing and the situation they seem to be in, bending their heads in prayer, reading the Bible in this prison orange, a quick inference is going to show that this place is a sort of prison. And then we also know that we can tell from the picture that the men are Hispanic, so likely the facility is near the border. And these are all just inferences we are making based off of what we can see in this photograph. All right, so then what I did is I analyzed the overall meaning of this photograph. Why is it important? Why did I choose this photo? Okay, so I said, the significance of this photo is impeccably clear. These men have their heads, excuse me, I typed this very late last night. These men have their heads bent in prayer. while being detained. It's not evident why they're being held, but knowing what we know about our current politics and immigration policies, it is likely that the gentlemen were detained after attempting to enter the country from Mexico or Central America. Now, I was so tired. Please understand. We did a lot of work to get there. But this is very important because you see these men more as human than you would have if you just looked at it and you thought, yep, they're a bunch of people that are in jail. But if you take a second to pull back the layers and notice, these men are praying, they're reading the Bible, they're living in this facility, and all they were trying to do is find a new home. And obviously, if they're being detained, there's more to that story. And we're not going to take sides, but we are going to look at this as these are real people that are being detained. All right, so let's work through one more example together. So we have these two people, they're holding hands. The composition, so what's in the foreground, what's in the background? The foreground of this picture is very clear. And so this is a very good example of foreground and background. The foreground is what you see. Boom. It's these two people holding hands. Then the background, what you have in the background is some sort of fence, some sort of wall, if you'd like to call it that. And speaking of our political climate. So the foreground of this picture is very clear. The two people holding hands. The background, in contrast, is the border fence. You're tired when. What? I'm so sleepy. All right, so we got our foreground, we got our background. Then we're going to look at the angle. This is it's pretty straightforward. We've got one person here, one person there. The camera seems to be right on their hands. So it's all very in center. The angle of this photo is extremely centered and focused. The photographer wanted the viewer to see these people, not the fence. And I think that's very important. I think it's very important. I keep spelling fence wrong, y'all. I promise I'm not. All right, so I think it's very important that, they wanted you to see this person. We've got a wedding ring. We have, I love this bracelet she's wearing. It's got a heart on it. This love, this couple. All right, lighting and color. There is very little color in this image. It's an all color image. But looking at this photo, we have a little bit of the blue sky peeking through. You can see sort of the red rust, the dark rust on this wall. And then the rich color of their skin. But overall, we don't see much color. And I think that's intentional. There isn't much color in this photo. We can see the sky peeking through and the rust on the fence, but overall, the photo focuses on the people and their hands. intertwine, right? So they're not wanting to distract from these two people that are holding hands right there by the border. They don't use distracting colors. They want to focus on these two people. They're simple, they're love, I'm assuming. No distractions. Because colors are distracting. You know, you see red, you're like, whoa, red. All right, our subject. In this, our subject's not really people, it's their hands, right? So the subject of the photo is the couple's hands. And the photographer took great care to not allow other parts of the photo to overshadow the subject, which is true. We just talked about that with lighting and color. You could look at it in the same way with perspective. You know, the photographer took a lot of care in making sure, you know, we are straight on, focused on this right here, these people's intertwined hands, this tender moment in a otherwise tense and painful place. So finally, our location is the location of this photo is at the border, at the, why do I keep doing that? As at the border by the fence, you know. Now, we don't know at this point whether these people are being separated, whether they're coming together, whether they're walking through that wall, that border together, or if we don't know. All we know is that these two hands are meeting by this fence, by the border wall. This photograph is significant because it emphasizes the humanity of the people entering the country. Ooh. Could you catch up with me? Okay. The people of the immigrants photographed. The photographer takes great care. It's frozen. All right, takes growth while it was frozen. All right, so the photographer takes great care in making those people the focal point of the photograph and those people alone, right? And that's all we're doing. It's not that complicated. It's not there's not a right or wrong answer. We're just trying to unpack what makes photos important, what makes them significant. And this is important because we are fed every single day lots of different perspectives from the media. We are given lots of different perspectives. And if we learn to be able to analyze those, we will be such better citizens. We will be more informed. We will be able to make decisions that will be successful and make us successful in our life. So that's just another skill that we are unpacking and practicing in this class. And I hope y'all will allow me to, well, you will, because it's a grade. So, but I hope you will take this to heart and understand why it's important, because it really is. All right, thank you so much. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, and email me if you have any questions about the assignment. Bye-bye.